aircraft then existing could reliably overfly. The result was a litany of both deadly crashes and astonishing feats of survival, as revealed in even a cursory perusal of the most accessible source material. From the multi-volume history compiled by a Veterans Pilot Association, the cloud around us was as black as a dungeon cell. The air currents seemed to grasp the plane and shake it as a dog would shake a rat, and then turn us loose only to regain its grip and shake more violently than before. Snow and hail beat against the plane, and the vertical currents seemed to be tossing us in a game of catch. The snow and freezing rain were forming huge slabs of ice on the leading edge of the wings. Cold sweat streamed down my face as I saw the small, artificial horizon turn slowly over its side and stay there. Without it and my other instruments, I could not tell if the plane was diving, climbing, or rolling. Finally, as though we were a bad taste in the mouth of the thunder god Thor, the storm seemed to spit us out into the calm and soupy overcast. Minutes passed before anyone spoke. From a civilian registry of crashes over the Hump. This Air Transport Command plane was on a routine flight from Jorhat, India to Chiang Kai, China. This aircraft was carrying ammunition, gasoline, and 10 1,000-pound bombs. Ice began building up, and it took 53 minutes to get up to 26,000 feet. By that time, one engine had seized, a second was leaking oil, and a third was on fire. The pilot ordered the crew to bail out and began a series of swallow swoops to maintain airspeed. The crew tried to open the rear hatch, but the pins broke on the release handle. They opened the right rear hatch, and the pilot gave the signal to go. The lone survivor, Sergeant Paul Bosham, landed safely, and with the help from friendly Tibetan natives, walked out to the Burma Road and encountered an English missionary. He then walked on until he reached the Chinese Army. This was 38 days after the crash of his plane. From a collection of reminiscences published by pilot Lieutenant Carl Constein. St. Elmo's fire made the cockpit weird. Rain hit the windshield, and sparkling bits of static electricity fell on us as though it carried through the windshield. Sparks built up on the ends of the windshield wipers like wet snow. Suddenly there was a deafening bang. We had been struck by lightning. The radio operator was knocked to the floor. The co-pilot frantically pointed to the instrument panel. We were descending so fast the gauges were maximum down, the engines so cold they registered almost no oil pressure. We were down to 11,000 feet in an area where the route minimum was 13,500. From the U.S. Army Air Force's Air Transport Command, Ditching and Survival reports. I was radio operator of Ship 321 that left Sukriting 0438 on Wednesday, 24th November, bound for Yunnan. Everything normal. Checked weather with Yunnan. They reported the weather bad, but getting better. At about 0500, noticed that engines started to surge. We lost altitude. Highest altitude was 19,500. I guess we jumped at 12,000. Haley went first, followed by Carlson, Burrows, Beck, Kaplan, Smith, and co-pilot. Nobody knows about the pilot. I remember seeing two, Smith and co-pilot probably above me. The ship circled above us and then started in a winding dive and hit a hill, almost underneath me. It lighted up the whole country for quite a while. I landed in a mass of high, thorny vines. I was in vines about 60 feet above the ground. Burdened from the outset by a stubborn disregard for weather, terrain, and indeed basic logistics, the Hump operation, or simply the Hump, as it was quickly dubbed by airmen, was further hampered by being embedded in the most chaotic theater of World War II. The China-Burma-India theater, or CBI, was defined by a blur of shifting commands bristling with military acronyms, competing interests, and contradictions that exposed the fault lines between the Allies, America and Britain, Britain and China, and ultimately and most fatefully between America and China. Although a military operation, its chief purpose was political, not military, a function of President Franklin Roosevelt's desire to boost the morale of Chiang Kai-shek and his nationalist government, and assure a close relationship between the U.S. and China after the war. Yet while strictly non-combatants, Hump airmen were fired on by Japanese planes and co-opted into the battle for Burma, a campaign that saw some of the fiercest fighting of the war, and as one historian put, it had the elements of a